The woman held her newborn son tightly as he cried continuously. When the doctor arrived and examined the baby, he discovered something shocking. The child had broken bones throughout his entire body. In other words, he had fractured bones while still in the womb. Years passed, and the child grew up. He looked no different from anyone else, but the slightest bump or fall would result in fractures. From birth until now, he'd spent a third of his life in hospitals. To comfort her son, his mother would give him a set of superhero comics every birthday, a tradition that continued well into his adulthood. What fascinated him most about the comics was the conflict between good and evil. His love for comics led him to open a comic book collectibles shop as an adult. Meanwhile, David, going through a midlife crisis, was taking a train back to Philadelphia. His job was mediocre, his marriage bland. The way he saw it, he had no idea what the point of life was anymore. Before long, the speeding train suddenly derailed. Of the 131 people on board, he was the only survivor, walking away completely unharmed. He emerged from the hospital like a miracle, and newspapers everywhere covered the story. After attending the funeral, he found a letter in his car with just one question: how many days of your life have you been sick? The question puzzled him. At work, he asked HR if he'd ever taken sick leave. The answer was no. Perfect attendance, never a sick day. He asked his wife the same thing at home, and she couldn't remember him ever being ill. Most importantly, he couldn't remember ever being sick either. This middle-aged man living an unremarkable life would wake up every morning with inexplicable dread. But today there was no dread. Following the address on the envelope, he tracked down the person who sent the letter. It was Elijah, now grown up. Having spent nearly half his life immersed in superhero comics, Elijah believed that if someone as fragile as himself, Mr. Glass, existed in this world, then there must also be someone with an unbreakable body. That's why he constantly monitored accident reports, plane crashes, hotel fires, train derailments, all the worst disasters in recent years. And among all these cases, there was only one survivor, David. But David couldn't confirm whether he'd ever been sick, and his son mentioned that David had been in a car accident once, the very accident that ended his football career. Listening to Elijah's theories, David thought he was a fraud and left with his son. Soon after, though, Elijah showed up at David's workplace. As they walked and talked, David brushed past someone and stopped. Perhaps it was his years of security work, but he sensed the man in camouflage was carrying a gun. Elijah asked him what color. David said it was probably a black-handled silver pistol.